Your Oregon Ducks, 11-0, number one in the nation still, and will remain that way. They win 16-13 at Camp Randall in Wisconsin, and they punch their ticket to the Big Ten championship game, where they will play either Indiana or Ohio State. Those two teams play next week when the Ducks are on the bye, so we will kick up our feet and watch that one and see who our next opponent will be. Well, not our next opponent, our championship game, because we know the next opponent, which we'll also have to talk about.
Be the doggies.
The dogs.
Woof woof.
The dogs. The World of Warcraft
Are they
Huskies.
Are they eating the dogs?
They are eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets. They're eating them all.
And they don't have to play them in the Big Ten championship game. So.
Yeah.
Ha ha to you Huskies fans. Yeah, I'm gonna shove that one at you too.
One more quick note that I received on the defense. This actually came from a Wisconsin Reddit thread. They said that Wisconsin got the ball 4 times in the fourth quarter and put together a grand total of 0 net yards, 1 turnover, and never advanced the ball past their own 31. That is a hell of a job by your defense.
Well, you notice the relentless pursuit happening in the fourth quarter, right? Which I kind of pointed out, like, you didn't see that in the first half, but then all of a sudden, with that big hit that Will Ortner was talking about, that I believe it was Manning laid out, or Toyota, excuse me, just like goodness, they, in the fourth quarter, maybe, it was that jump around that got them all fired up.
I love it. Well, let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball, because there was some good, there was some bad, there was some ugly. And whether you want to call this glass half full, glass half empty, good cop, bad cop, Will, we got to break down both the good and the bad.
Right.
What do you want to address first?
I was gonna ask you. Let's go bad.
Okay.
I think it's easier to start with the bad,
and then
you
make
can be
ourselves
good.
feel better going into the break.
It's the compliment sandwich.
Yeah. Well,
I've read that Michael Scott book.
Well, then we'd have to do good, then bad, then good. So, well, I gave you the good defensive stats. So now we're to
bad.
On to the bad. So it's been brought up on the fan text line. This offense clearly misses Tez Johnson. That's not the only thing that's going on, but it in the break you were talking to me about the ball distribution to the receivers and what you got out of your receiving core.
That's bad.
Let's talk a little bit about the Tez absence now. The second week in a row that the passing game has looked a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, right now, just look at the stats. Evan Stewart has half your catches.
Yep.
50% of your receptions went to one guy. And now, don't get me wrong, I want Evan Stewart to have the ball in his hands as much as humanly possible. But at the same time, you can't have one target that is so disproportionately targeted compared to everyone else. We had the same issue early on in the year when it was Tez that was getting all those targets. And guess what? The offense looks like it's reverted back to that, because it felt like right around that Ohio State game is when Gabriel finally got comfortable with Evan Stewart. And there have been flashes of Trayshawn Holden where it feels like he's comfortable with Trayshawn Holden. The Michigan game sticks out to me. But this week, he didn't go to Trayshawn Holden much. Trayshawn Holden had 3 catches. Most of them were quick little, get the ball out of Gabriel's hands and let him try and make someone miss.
Before you get too much farther, that's something, and we can circle back to it, but I don't want to say, like, I need to, but I would like to see more out of Trayshawn Holden. It feel obviously, he had the issue after Ohio State where he got kicked out of the game, and Justice Lowe, I don't want to say took his spot, but started getting some of those starting reps. Justice Lowe goes down in this game, and Trayshawn Holden, I think, had 1 catch, or he had three for 16.
And they were mostly, it's like smoke screens, bubble screens.
But we
slants.
saw it when Tez went down against Michigan. We know what's there, and that's what makes me want more. Not because I'm like, oh, this guy can't hack it. I know he can. I want more of it.
Well, and the question is Wisconsin doing a good job of scheming him up? They were getting a little bit of pressure on Dylan Gabriel, but I didn't feel like it was excessive. I am a little bit worried. There were a couple times where Wisconsin had free rushers. Now, I'd have to go back and watch the all 22 of this game of, like, is that an offensive line missing thing? Or was this a situation where they brought 6 and you had 5 guys in protection? Because that happens from time to time. Sometimes the defense calls a good blitz into, like, what you're going against. Sometimes you're sliding away, you're sliding to the left, and they bring the blitz to the right. Sometimes that happens. And so we'd have to go back and fully watch this game from that all 22 to truly understand where that issue is. But right now, as I look at it, you need more from Terrence Ferguson. You need more from Sadiq. You need more from Holden. You need more from Lowe. And now that Gary Bryant Jr. is back, you need more from him. Like, you have 3 guys between Lowe, Holden, and Bryant that should be explosive in the slot. Like, that's a mismatch. You're going to get put either a nickel corner on you where you should be faster, or in Trayshawn's case, you should be bigger than they are, or you're getting a safety that's guarding you, or in some situations, it's a linebacker. Terrence Ferguson, yes, you look at the stat line, 3 catches, 52 yards, like that's awesome. But guess what? The most important ball, you dropped.
Ooh.
And in the spot of the field where you should be at your biggest, which is the red zone, and he's the biggest target on the team. He went into the year only, a few touchdowns away from breaking the school record for tight end touchdowns. And it feels like this year he's taken a step back in that way. I don't know if it's completely all his fault, because Dylan Gabriel has to try and get the football to him more. And I feel like when I do see Gabriel throw him the ball in the low red zone, he throws it to him low.
Yeah.
When you have a target like Terrence Ferguson,
6'5",
let him go up and get it.
He's
Throw the ball up. He's
got such a massive
athlete.
frame too. It's
Right.
just,
Trust him. So it's not one person's fault. It's everyone's fault.
but so let me ask you this: it does feel like, to a degree, Dylan falls in love with a receiver. We've seen it with Tez, even week to week. Last week we were concerned Ferguson was seeing way too much attention. Not too much, but like
the irony, right?
He saw like 12 balls go his way last week.
100%.
I think caught 6 or 7 of them. And then this week it's Evan Stewart, which that'll go in the good category later. I loved what I saw from him emerging today. He was fantastic. But
agreed.
When it comes to those others maybe not stepping up or not getting enough out of the other pass catchers, how much of it's on Stein, how much of it's on Gabriel, and how much of it's on the pass catchers themselves? I think there's probably a little bit to share for all three parties, but who's holding most of that responsibility?
33.3, 33.3, 33.3.
Okay.
Because the wide receivers have to get open. Stein has to do a better job of scheming guys open at times. I'm a little worried when I say this, but it feels a little bit like some of these wide receivers have to be schemed open at times. That's not a diss on them, but there are times where sometimes you need a coach to get you open.
And
it
they're
feels
just not
like
beating guys often enough,
it
essentially?
feels like that happens at times, which then goes back to your wide receivers, because you need to start beating more guys off the line of scrimmage. Like right now, Terrence Ferguson beats guys off the line of scrimmage. Evan Stewart beats guys off the line of scrimmage. Tez Johnson beats the guys off the line of scrimmage. When you see a big low game, it's because it feels like it was schemed up. When you see a big game from Holden, it's because he was schemed up, or he got a matchup that he was favorable in against like Michigan, right? So it feels like Stein needs to do a better job there. Dylan Gabriel needs to do a better job of trusting his wide receivers or throwing the ball to where they're going to be.
Sure.
The interception that he threw in the low red zone is unacceptable. You threw that ball like you thought Lowe was going to sit and stop there. Lowe is running that route like he's not supposed to stop, and I could be wrong, but from everything that I heard from the different broadcasts that I was listening to, especially from one Dusty Hara, who I trust immensely when it comes to wide receiver play, he said that didn't look like a route that he was supposed to stop there. You can't throw that ball behind him. You cannot turn that ball over in that spot. It is a momentum killer, and I think it jump-started why you got stuck in this game. And then wide receivers, you know what?
To that point, the opposite happened later in the game with Evan Stewart. Evan Stewart stopped on a slant, and Gabriel threw it where he thought he was going to keep going. So you saw both alternatives of that same play happen the wrong way. So there's something going on there.
And that's a little bit on coaching too, like we talked about with Stein. And then the other thing is wide receivers, your scholarship to make a man miss. You know who talks the most in football? It's cornerbacks. The second group that talks the most, it's wide receivers, because they're talking to cornerbacks all the time about how great they are. Well, if you're so dang great, beat someone one-on-one. Please.
Yep.
Because right now, Oregon desperately needs that with Tez Johnson back. Now, to be fair, Tez Johnson was warming up. He didn't have pads on. He didn't have the special sweatshirt on, but he was running around. So that's a good sign.
Can I need to go a little bit further and say that I think Will Stein carries a little bit more of this blame here, and here's why.
Okay.
We're in a way different system, watching Oregon football than we were watching them play in the Pac-12, right? Big Ten, guys bigger up front. It's a run-first offense, at least the teams that you're playing most of, opponents-wise. So it's just a change, and you're going to have to look at maybe some more options on the offensive side of the ball than you have in the past against Pac-12 opponents. I thought going into a Big Ten 10 season. 2 tight ends was a really great idea for Oregon. You can run them across the middle of the field, that slant either in zone or man coverage. You've got one of those guys.
I still think those guys can be beasts.
Well,
and,
exactly.
and will be.
And you wonder why a guy like when you've got Patrick Herbert, when you've got Terrence Ferguson and Kenyon Sadiq, you wonder why Will Stein not only didn't line up 2 tight ends going out for passes together today, but why didn't Kenyon Sadiq run the ball at all? I thought he was supposed to be our Blake Corum. I thought he was supposed to be like this multifaceted, weapon that he could be like the tight end, like that can run it, catch it, and block. But we didn't use him in that way today. And if we're missing Tez Johnson, I feel like Will Stein has a little bit more on that Swiss Army knife that he just did not use today.
I would just say with the Sadiq thing, we might be a year early.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my whole thing. Like, just remember, he's 19, I believe.
That's fair.
He's a 19-year-old.
I think it's tough because when you see the flashes of what he's capable of or what his potential is, you think, oh man, you could use this guy so much more. And then
the issue is that what did you hear about him coming out of spring ball?
That he's a freak?
That he's Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers is the most impressive tight end that we've had.
I said Blake Corum.
You said that's what I got confused. I knew what you meant.
It was Brock Bowers. My bad.
Brock Bowers, but you get compared to Brock Bowers, and I mean, obviously, Warren, the kid out at Penn State, is doing the exact same thing. Actually, probably a little bit to a higher degree. But I think with Sadiq, and I don't disagree with you. I'd like to see him get the ball more. I also think that he's 19, so we do have to pump the brakes a little bit. It feels a little bit with Sadiq at times like, well, why isn't the younger backup quarterback in? And it's like, well, you got to trust that the coaches are seeing things at practice and saying, hey, he's not there yet. The potential is there, the flashes, the brilliance, it's there, but it's not there enough.